Hey everyone, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're talking about how to make serverless containers hosted on Railway, the cloud, scale to 0. So I build a lot of projects, but a majority of them get very little traffic. We're talking about like 10 people a day, maybe. And this means that keeping them online all the time is wasteful as they just aren't needed. They're just burning a hole in my pocket. 99% of the time they're just sitting there getting zero traffic, so why am I paying for them? In this post, we'll explore how to make serverless containers hosted on Railway, scale to 0 so you don't pay for them when they're not being used. This also works for the things that aren't containerized, like I think if you're using the Nix build packs and stuff, they have the same idea, but I mostly build with serverless containers, so that's why I'm kind of targeting that right now. All right, first let's talk about Railway's scale to 0. So Railway calls it scale to 0 feature app sleeping. And you can find the official Railway docs on that here. And this is basically how it works. So if an app doesn't send outbound data for 10 minutes, then it goes to sleep. Note that this is not inbound, okay? So it's important because if you're getting inbound traffic, then you probably are sending outbound traffic in the form of just like a response. Those take packets, so that will be considered outbound because you're sending like 200 okay. But this also means that if you're doing operations that don't have inbound, things like you're logging out to, let's say, Datadog, or you're sending API requests somewhere else like a webhook or something, that will also count. And so this is good because it's not only for user-facing apps, it can also be for internal apps or something that is causing the outbound, but just something to keep in mind. So if it doesn't send outbound traffic for 10 minutes, then it will go to sleep. And then once it's asleep, if a sleeping app receives traffic, then it will try to wake itself up. And so this is useful because when an app is asleep, you really only pay for its storage. So often storage is going to be like the image of the container because it needs to store that somewhere. A lot of platforms will charge you for that. And also any persistent stores. So if you have like a database, usually you don't make databases go to sleep, but let's just say you do. You might have like a volume somewhere holding something, like its actual storage. You'll still want to pay for that because that needs to persist. You can't make that go away. But you don't have to pay for its compute because it's not really doing any computations, it's asleep. And so this is why I use it for a lot of my apps. A lot of platforms have this, like Google Cloud Run allows you to scale to 0 as well. So this is pretty common, across the board. Now, some caveats with app sleeping on Railway is that, one, waking up takes a while. So you need to expect a pretty slow cold boot time when it's waking up because it does need to go through its full startup process. And so, this is similar with serverless functions. Serverless containers are the same way. It needs to go from a sleep state to a live state. And a lot of times app startups will have a bunch of like health checks, and maybe they want to upgrade the database. Maybe they want to do some initialization of all their stuff. And so usually this is going to take pretty long time to wake up. And so, if this is a critical thing for your users, maybe you want to avoid that. The other thing with Railway in particular, I haven't seen this before, though it kind of makes sense, is that your app is deprioritized. So in remote cases, this means that your app will fail to wake up. And this makes sense from like the cloud's perspective because, if people are paying them, then they probably want to prioritize those workloads that are getting paid. And so I would only expect these extreme cases to happen if Railway's infrastructure itself is under high load, that your thing would get deprioritized, but it is something to keep in mind. Note from me, I've never experienced this in 3 months of using Railway. Obviously, 3 months isn't that long. Railway's pretty new. It still has time to disappoint us with breaking infrastructure. But I think if you're just putting side projects on us, this doesn't really matter. Now for my workloads, this really makes a lot of sense because none of my apps are critical. So slow wake up times, the possibility of not waking up is okay for me. Like worst case, someone's like, oh, your stupid checkbox website doesn't work. And I really don't care. But if you're running a business on this, then it might be worthwhile to maybe not go the app sleeping route. So at least you have more of a idea that they will prioritize your workload, that your users will have a good experience. But for the most part, you'll know when that's necessary, and that'll be when you have paying customers. All right, so how to set up Railway app sleeping. So to set up app sleeping, you need to go to your project's architecture page, select the app to change, go to settings, scroll down to the app sleeping section, toggle enable app sleeping, and then deploy the new revision for the changes to take effect. And I will show you what this looks like. So let me come here. This is my HAMY Labs projects thing. You can see that I've got 5 apps in here and most of them are sleeping. This is what I'm saying. I really don't get that much traffic. And so they often will go to sleep for a good portion of the day when people aren't actually using them. And so you can get here how do I show you this? So if you click on your project, I'm on my HAMY Labs project, you'll see your whole architecture. This is what this tab is called, and you'll see all of your apps. And you can see I have 5 apps here, and then I have my Postgres database that all of these are talking to. And to set up sleeping, I can go into, just click one of them. It'll show you my deployments, and then you go to settings over here, and then I will scroll down and we will see this app sleeping section right here, and we can toggle this. So mine's toggled on, but let me just toggle it off real fast. When you make a change, this isn't saved yet. In order to actually save, you have to click this deploy guy over here, and this will deploy the new revision with those new settings. And so I'm not going to do this because I don't want to turn it off, but when you turn it on, just keep that in mind. You do need to deploy the new revision for it to take effect. Next. So I've been using Railway for the past few months and been pretty happy with it. I'm currently hosting 5 apps there, like I just showed you. And I think it's pretty simple. It's maybe not the cheapest and maybe not the most powerful. Like you don't get all the like crazy things Google Cloud or like AWS or Azure offers you. But in my experience, it's made my hosting scenarios for these very simple side projects. I just need to host a container and have a database. Like that's really it. They're much simpler, and with app sleeping, they can be pretty cheap. So that's been a win for me so far. For hosting, I prefer serverless containers because it allows me to build the same container locally in dev that I deploy in prod. And so this, removes a whole class of errors where like the environment's different, and that's just like annoying. I just don't have to debug those anymore. And I use Cloud Seed, my F# project boilerplate, to give me a head start. It includes a containerized full stack F# app ready for deployment. It also has a local database, so you can basically, dev the same way that you would host in prod, which I find makes it much simpler to do things. And so I can now spin up a new app in basically like 10 minutes, at least the foundation of it, and then start developing it, because my goal really is to like get a full app, or at least a full milestone of the app out within like 2 to 4 hours, because I just don't want to spend that much time on my side projects. So yeah, if you want to learn more about Cloud Seed and like kind of how I'm building apps, you can learn more here. Now, if you like this post, you might also like how I host side projects for $5 per month on DigitalOcean without managing servers using their app platform. Might also be interested in, does DigitalOcean app platform support scale to zero autoscaling, and a bit more why I like scale to zero and how do you figure this out on a different cloud. And then finally, you might be interested in how this developer side project racked up a $100,000 cloud bill on Netlify and 5 ways to avoid the same fate. I'm going into common mistakes with a serverless architectures and technologies that I think you should really avoid with side projects so that you don't, financially ruin yourself. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.